Welcome back to another episode of the FOMOFanz Podcast. As always, Brian Fanzo, your host here, and I'm excited. I got a whole bunch of news happening. I'm actually recording this on January 31st, the last day of the first month of the year. And if you guys follow me on Instagram, iSocialFans, you might have seen a post that I did today on how 2019 has already been the most epic year ever for me. I won't go into those details, but I've really been focusing on self-awareness in 2018 as well as 2019, and I'm seeing the fruits of that paying off now in some amazing ways that I really never dreamed of, and I'm beyond excited of where that's going to go this year. I have lots of new things in the works, but yeah, feel free to check it out, Instagram.com/iSocialFans if you want to read that post on. And I talk about why, and I talk about Adderall, and I talk about how I've lost more weight than I actually way less now than I did when I was 15 years old. So kind of crazy to think about that. So I've been kind of doing my best to put things out there and make 2019 the best year ever, and hopefully you guys are having a great 2019 as well. And I want to thank everybody. The Fire Festival episode that I put out last episode has got some amazing response. I know some of you have shared that with your community that maybe don't listen to this show on a regular basis. I also have a brand new podcast announcement. I'm launching a new podcast next week. You guys are just gonna have to wait to try that episode, but I'm gonna talk about that on the next episode. What's coming up next week. We're launching a brand new episode. It's not a solo podcast. I'm actually co-hosting with somebody. Some of you know what's going on there. Others of you are just gonna have to wait. So I'm excited about that as well. But one of the things I teased out in last episode, and remember, with everything that's going on in the world today, and the Fire Festival is a perfect example. We had the Gillette ads that are going on right now. I think marketing and sales and really customer experience, this whole world we're living in right now, we are in a content overload mentality. We are in a distraction overload mindset world, hence why I was saying the importance of being self-aware. But we're also in this world where we are still looking for people that we can trust, resources that we can trust. We're looking for email newsletters that provide value, that don't spam us. We're looking for, if we're signing up for something, we want someone to respect our time. And so I think today's consumers, I talk about this a lot, today's consumers are more empowered today than they ever have been before. They are also smarter than they've ever been before. If they see something that looks like an ad, smells like an ad, they know it's an ad. If they see a product placement over someone's shoulder, like I'm recording this live on video, you can see my Fanzo's It's Yogurt sign, which is a frozen yogurt shop my parents used to own when I grew up. I had to start managing that when I was 14, 15 years old. But if that wasn't my family's yogurt shop that we closed down years ago, that would be a pretty easy product placement. So like today's consumer is extremely smart, and there's also this need, we can thank innovation, we can thank our mobile phones. I mean, we're always connected. I'm not a big believer in like telling people to be less connected. I'm just telling people to prioritize things and be all in when you're doing things. I don't believe in a work-life balance. I don't believe in an online-offline balance. Balance is kind of ridiculous, right? Like I feel like you have to figure out how living works for you. And for me, a lot of the stuff I do when I'm connecting online is just as valuable as, or maybe even more important in some cases for me and my business and other things than what I'm doing offline, right? And so I think it's this idea now where the world we're living in now, what we're just trying to figure out is we're trying to figure out what works best for us today while we're trying to set ourselves up to be successful tomorrow. And the title of this episode is The Dark Side of FOMO. And you hear people all the time. I have lots of friends, and even when I launched this podcast years ago now, I have a lot of people that reach out to me and like, Brian, you're promoting FOMO. We don't think the world needs more FOMO. They need more J.O.M.O, which is the joy of missing out. And here's the thing. That was my thought. I thought about this differently years ago. So in 2013, 2014, when I was looking at like what my priorities are and how I looked at all of this, I love the fear of missing out. I love studying the bleeding edge technology. I love listening and learning about everything that's brand new. I love hacking things. I love thinking about 2020. I love looking at artificial intelligence and how it's going to fit there. Like I absolutely love the idea. And part of it is, and this is where self-awareness comes in, and forgive me if this doesn't make sense at first, but like it also has to do with my personality. I am not a jealous person. I am not a person that gets mad when other people have success. I'm actually the opposite. Like one of the things that I think I've discovered about myself the most over the last 3 years, and it impacts my personal life, my business life, even my, things that I don't talk about on this show, but like, for me, understanding where I find joy, and I truly do find joy in good people having success, and I do find joy in understanding good examples of things. And I am I'm a massive optimist. I'm a massive optimist. I always look at the bright side of things. I also believe in giving people multiple chances. I mean, my favorite baseball player is Barry Bonds. I mean, Barry Bonds, in my opinion, is an amazing baseball player that unfortunately during an era where steroids weren't tested, he leveraged steroids, or quote unquote, they claim that he leveraged steroids. But so like when I look at all of these things, whenever I kind of put all of these things that are out there, I also understand that not everyone is like me. A lot of people get overwhelmed. A lot of people get jealous. A lot of people, when someone else succeeds in their industry or their space, or maybe a friend on Facebook gets engaged, their first instinct is, why am I not getting engaged? Or why is that person sharing that? Or you immediately judge what that person is wearing, right? And so like, this is something that I think as a culture, especially in the world we're living in now, we are more connected, more dialed in. We have more access to everyone and everything than we've ever had before. The reason FOMO did not exist for my grandparents and even my parents is when my parents grew up in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Their exposure to outside of Pittsburgh was like zero. Like my parents barely ever traveled or went on vacation. So they didn't have to fear missing out things because they weren't aware of anything that was going on. They knew what their day-to-day was, and that's all that mattered. And here's the thing that I think we have to kind of set the stage with this, and I want to put this further in the I want to put your mind around this. What if we look at the changing in perspective, right? Imagine if, like, let's say the early 90s or in the 80s. Imagine in the 80s that if we had the access that existed today, right? Like these kind of things, this idea of always want to know what's going on is something we would all have. But there's also an element where we have to understand when it's healthy, how it works for us individually, and then ultimately we have to set ourselves up to succeed. So early on, before I launched this podcast, my goal was to get everybody else like me, embrace FOMO, jump on the leading edge, be an early adopter, kick the tires, don't be afraid of failure. And then I realized that that's not what everyone else wants. And the whole goal of this podcast, it's in the bio, the description of this podcast, is I want to help you cure your fear of missing out. I want this podcast to be a place where when you tune in here, you don't have to follow me on every social network. I always tell people, follow me on your favorite social network. Don't follow me on everyone, because you know what? I blast a lot of content, but I'm on every channel. But for you, if I'm overwhelming, I know I talk fast, I know I put a lot of stuff out there, but I want you to figure out what's best for you. What makes the most sense for you. And so when we think about FOMO, or the fear of missing out, one of the things that I think we have done a very bad job of in 2018, 2019, we've done a really bad job of for the last 10 years, is we need to prioritize what distracts us and where we get our information, and how we look at the future and we look at things coming in. Because here's the thing. We are living right now, we are living in a rate of change that we've never seen before. Things are changing so fast that we can't keep up. And so back in the 80s and 90s, change wasn't this fast. And I would even argue the beginning of the 2000s, when I was in college, I graduated in 2003, like things didn't change this much. Even MySpace didn't change that much. Even iTunes didn't change that much. Even the computer, I mean, the gateway computer, the little cow gateway computer that I bought when I was a freshman in college, that computer was pretty much the same type of computer for about 8 years. Now the computers and iPads and technology, I mean, we have so much change. And so here's how I like to preach this. This is how I like to put people out there. And this is how I really want people to look at this, is we need to readjust our own expectations, and we need to shift on how we're looking at this change. How do you learn about change? How do you study change? And then how do you put change into your own day-to-day life? So if, for example, and this is something, for a lot of people, there's new apps that come out on your iPhone or Android all the time, right? And when someone sees a new app or someone tells you a new app to download, for many of us, what we do is we're like, well, I have to see the latest or greatest. So we download it. We usually open it. If it's like a crazy login screen, we probably say, we'll come back to it, which we know we won't. And we log into it, we play around with it a little bit. We're like, oh, that's interesting. That might be able to replace these two other things on my phone. And then we close it down and we move on, and then we continue to use those two other things. And then what happens there is that we never look at that new technology and give it a fair shot. So for me, when I download a new app and it's something I want to try, what I do is I put it into a folder on my phone that says testing. And then what I do is I remove from my phone the other apps that I feel it's going to replace. And I test it out for a week, sometimes 2 weeks, to test out that new technology. And I want to put it into my workflow. I want to give it its due diligence. And then at the end of the 2 weeks, I'm going to examine, did it make my life easier? Am I more productive? Do I like the experience on it? And if the answer is yes, I can move away from those other two apps. If the answer is no, I hit delete of the new app, I re-download the old apps, and I move forward. And the reason I talk about that, and the reason I want to use this example when we're looking at the world we're in now, is that when we are looking at change, when you are presented a change, maybe it's a new email marketing platform, hint, hint, that's going to be our sponsor next month. Maybe it's a new social network. Maybe it's a new iPhone. Maybe you just got the AirPods, whatever it may be. We have to change our approach to change, but we also have to change our approach to learning about the new stuff that's going on. Because here's what I stress, and I stress this on stage, and if people still don't really get it, and maybe I need to find new ways to present this, is I don't want you to chase shiny objects. And FOMO oftentimes invokes a feeling where we feel the need to be on the latest and greatest. I mean, I update my iPhone every single time. Every iPhone that's ever existed, I always upgrade to the latest and greatest, except for my one currently. What I decided was, Brian, why do I keep updating to the newest iPhone? Well, I'm the FOMO guy and I like to be on the latest stuff. But then I had to ask myself, okay, does the new XS Max really give me things that I need? Do I really need to be on that new iPhone, or can I keep my iPhone X that I currently have right now? And so that little bit of questioning myself allowed me to think, you know what? I'm going to use the iPhone X for a couple more months, and then I'm going to come back to reading about people's reviews about the newest iPhone, and then I'll decide down the road. And that's something new for me. I'm an early adopter. I'm usually the one that writes the reviews about the stuff of the new technology. But when it came to this new iPhone, that's something that I did, and I can tell you, this is how we have to approach FOMO. But there's also a dark side of it. And the Fire Festival invoked some of that. Marketers have really done a really bad job of that. And what I mean by that is, I get 4 or 5 emails a week from marketers that are saying, don't miss out. This is the last time this price is going to be this low for my online course. 2 days later, we've extended this never before low price. You must get this price now. Don't miss out. Then a week later, we say, we know that you didn't jump in on that price, but guess what? We have a newer, more awesome, updated pricing structure that you don't want to miss out on. And what happens there is that consumers are like, bullshit. We don't believe anything you have, any sale that you're talking about. We don't believe that we're going to be missing out, and we'll just kind of prioritize what we want. And in many cases, they block that out. And sadly, for us as marketers, we have to understand. We have to understand that, and I tell this all the time, if you're blasting your message, or you're always trying to invoke an emotion of fear, you are going to alienate your audience. You're going to get your audience to stop trusting you. And then even worse, your audience is going to be so annoyed by you giving them this feeling of fear that they do not like, that they are going to unfollow, unsubscribe, and block you. And so I will always argue that the worst case scenario of blasting, over-blasting, and overusing FOMO as a marketing tactic isn't that it doesn't work. It's that you piss off your consumers so much that they don't trust you, they block you, unfollow, and you turn your emails into spam. And I think the Fire Festival, which I talked about last episode, what they did was they used FOMO to their advantage. When they needed to sell more VIP tickets, they they just closed the general admission tickets and said general admission is sold out. Therefore, people that were like, oh my God, I couldn't decide if I wanted to go or not, but now the general admission's sold out and I'm really afraid that I'm not gonna be able to go to this event, so I'm just gonna buy the higher price ticket. Like, it worked, right? I mean, like, let's be real quick. It freaking worked. But that's not a feeling or an emotion you want to drive a lot of people to, or you want to overuse. And then, not to mention, if you leverage fear in marketing, which is the FOMO, the fear of missing out, if you leverage this in your marketing and then you don't deliver the byproduct on the backside, the alienation, the feeling that the consumer has is 10 times stronger than if they were traditionally marketed to something. Think about it this way. I was so unsure of what to do, but I was afraid I was going to miss out and all my friends were going to be there. So I just decided to pull the trigger and I bought the tickets. I'm still not sure if I should have done that, but I'm going to go make it happen. And I'm going all in because I don't want to miss out. And then you go to an experience and it sucks. Well, now you feel like, well, damn, I should have trusted my gut. Like, man, I'm a bad person. I made a horrible decision. And man, that company, kind of like, they forced me to make a decision when I wasn't ready. And I'm really pissed off, right? And like, this is something we have to understand. And right. And so if you're using fear as an emotional trigger for marketing or sales, and it's something we use, I mean, let's face it, sex sells, fear invokes selling. For me, inspiration and, optimism and global messages that inspire people to be better. That's what invokes me to purchase things, right? So when I read a story about Away luggage, which you guys know, I'm a huge fan of Away luggage. It's the best piece of luggage I've ever bought. I'm not an affiliate of theirs. I'm not sponsored by them, but I read the story of how Away luggage came to be. And that's why I bought the luggage. It wasn't because I felt like I needed to get the yellow suitcase before it went out of stock, which it did. And it wasn't because it was because it's sexy. The sex wasn't sell. But when we're looking at this, and what I want to think is that we have to understand that we live in a world, and I see some people commenting here on the live Facebook Live. We live in a world where we're constantly comparing ourselves, but we're also constantly trying to improve ourselves. And when you're constantly trying to improve, you're always you should be always looking at others and studying. But here's where I think we go wrong when it comes to this. And it might be low self-esteem, but it might also just be we have to recalibrate ourselves, right? And the other piece of this, I said that I think we all have to manage our distractions. So like for me, I listen to podcasts. That's how I consume the latest and greatest technology and news and stuff. But I don't subscribe to a lot of emails or even social networks that are FOMO inducing for me, because I don't want that content when I'm in social media mood. When I'm in podcast learning mood, I want FOMO type content. I want to learn about these things that are the latest and greatest. Oftentimes when I'm on Flipboard, which is the app that I use to consume all my content, there's oftentimes where I'll see an article and I'm like, ooh, that's something I might want to buy, or that's something I want to learn more about. But at that moment, I'm not in a headspace to wrap my head around that as something for me. I add it to a folder in my browser, and I revisit that later, right? Where other ways I'm reading and consuming things. And so I think this is part of it, but I also think there's this other part of it beyond self-esteem, beyond where people are at, beyond kind of how people are looking, how we are looking at things, is we do not define our own success enough, and we do not tweak our goals enough so that we aren't always thinking about everyone else's competition and we aren't judging other people. Do you know why I'm not jealous and I don't judge other people? And sometimes, someone gets a gig and I'm like, damn, I should have got that gig, but I am happy for them. But I'm like, man, I need to work harder, or I need to be more strategic, or maybe I need to create more content on that topic that I thought would have got me there. That's a fine emotion. But funny enough, the reason that works for me is I have my own definition of success. I have my own goals, and I have plans on working towards them. And everything someone else does that makes them successful is not something that is in my purview, right? Like, I know what's going to get me from A to be, right? And I'm always learning, but I'm always adjusting that. And I always tell people this. I'm like, what does success look like for you? And maybe you need to draw a vision board. And on your vision board, draw a bunch of things. I'm not a drawer, so I don't have a vision board. I have a whole bunch of walls that I write things out. I do mind dumps of my brain onto the wall. But create a vision board, and every time you get this emotion of fear, or you get this emotion of jealousy, or this emotion of why did they get this and I did not, you should be looking over at this vision board and saying, well, does this align? If I would have gotten that, does it get me one step closer to my success? If it does, you need to reevaluate your goals, and you need to reprioritize different things in your life. But unfortunately, what we do is we say, why did we judge other people? We get scared of the latest and change. And this is the worst byproduct of FOMO. People get so overwhelmed of new things, of change, of innovation, of disruption, that rather than us keeping an open mind to the possibilities, we immediately bash everything that we don't know. This is an epidemic in our society at the moment. If we see something that is going to disrupt our space, or we're going to have to change drastically to embrace it, and we do not like it, and we don't really understand it, rather than us reprioritizing and trying to learn more, we decide to bash it and break it down. And here's the breaking news on that concept. It does not work in today's day and age. If you try to stop change, if you try to bash change, if you try to attack and break that down, all it does is make you look smaller, and it helps make the change run you over. And so I really think, I'm not a big believer in doing all or nothing. I see some people that are agreeing 100% with this. The other thing that we do is, if you're looking at new technology or something new, it is not an all or nothing play a majority of the time, right? Like getting a new car, that's an all or nothing play. But for the most part, you can slowly adopt things, or you can set yourself up to succeed. And so that's how I'm gonna talk about this at the end of this podcast episode. This is my goal for everyone that's listening to this. I don't want you to just say, I don't suffer from FOMO, I suffer from J.O.M.O. Well, that's crap, right? Like no one celebrates missing out on everything, because if that was the case, you just lock yourself in your house and you wouldn't watch TV and you wouldn't pay attention to any of the social networks that are going on. That's just crap, right? Like, what I believe, we have to find joy in every moment, and we have to understand in our own prioritization what matters to us and what doesn't matter to us. For me, this was very hard. One of the secrets and one of the ways that I did this is I stopped consuming and focusing on people that were in my industry, and I started focusing more on my customers and my community. Therefore, if people in my industry are doing something that was invoking a little bit of fear of missing out or invoking a little bit of jealousy, then I just decided I'm not going to include them. Remember, you have the power to control what you see in your social networks, what you see in your email inbox. Oh yeah, and you also have control for what notifications pop up on your phone. If all these notifications get you distracted and you get overwhelmed because you're afraid you're going to miss out on something, do me a favor, turn the notifications off, or prioritize the notifications. For me, I have different notifications on my laptop than I do my iPad. I have different ones on my iPad than I do my iPhone. When I'm on my iPad, every social network that I have, all of the notifications are on. So it's literally like an overwhelming of notifications nonstop. But that's because my iPad is that I'm in that frame of mind when I'm on my iPad, usually on an airplane, usually when I'm traveling. On my iPhone, I have very few notifications on, because I know that, with my phone, the things that are going to be notifying me, they're worth disrupting my day, they're worth distracting me, and they're things that I don't want to miss out on, right? And so I think this is something we have to kind of get better at. And so this is my call to action. This is what I'm going to ask everybody to do, is I want you to start putting things in your life that allow you to study and learn what's coming, but not doing it at a sporadic way. So maybe make it every single Friday. You're going to spend 30 minutes every Friday listening to a new podcast or reading blogs about things that you're not using yet or things that you're not doing. And make that something that you do every Friday. And during the week, if you discover something new or something that gives you that feeling, put it into a folder so you can revisit it on that one day a week, right? Or better yet, like for me, I do that on at the end of the night is when I tap into my folder for things that I'm studying. The other thing I want people to understand is that we need to start embracing an empathetic mindset. And what I mean by that is, when we see other people's success, when we see other people doing things that give us that FOMO feeling, what we need to ask ourselves is, how did they do that? Why are they doing it? and what does their success look like, right? And then we need to put that into our own filter and ask ourselves, if we did that, does it make us one step closer to success? And remember, when I use the word success, I also equally use the word happiness, because success and happiness to me are the same thing. My goal in business isn't to work all my life. It is for me to do the things that I love and set myself up to be as happy as I possibly can, which means I need to be successful in business, successful as a dad of my daughter, successful as a boyfriend, all of those things that exist. And I think this is where we really have to change our approach to FOMO. And as marketers, if you are a marketer listening to this, start being strategic. Start being very methodical with how you use fear as an emotion to get people to do something. Use it strategically, so strategically that whenever you do it, people actually fear missing out. I can tell you there is so much of this being used right now in my social network feeds that I laugh at. I do not feel like I'm missing out on anything. And sadly, I probably do miss out on a couple of things because I don't trust the brands or the people that are talking about it. And entrepreneurs, you're the freaking worst. Entrepreneurs, everyone says your last chance to sign up for this, because, people realize that to get people to sign up for an online course, you have to invoke fear, so they buy now, they don't wait too long, right? Well, now everybody uses that, and so now it doesn't invoke fear for anything. You're like, well, if I miss out on that course, such and such entrepreneur is going to launch a new course next month, so I'll just get in on that one, right? We've literally used FOMO so haphazardly that it's alienated our consumer base that doesn't need more fear in their life. We have enough fear in the world to go around, and so I want you to cure your FOMO. When someone tells you they are suffering from FOMO around digital marketing, social media, entrepreneurship, emerging technology, give them my podcast and say, listen to this once a week, and it'll help you kind of understand where things are going, but not have you think overwhelmed. And then the other part of this is just remember that it's a delicate thing to remember, but you have to say, is this something that's going to help me today? Or is this something that I just need to learn about so that I can set myself up for tomorrow? I strategically do so many things in my life and in my business that are about embracing something that is coming down the way. I've been working with brands. I've been telling this for a long time. They should not have FOMO for augmented reality and virtual reality, but because augmented reality and virtual reality are coming, but they're not here today. It's not fully integrated today. But what they should do is, rather than going all in on AR or VR, and the opposite, ignoring it, what you should do is you should start saying, what do I need to do to set myself up to embrace this thing once it comes down, which I believe is video and live video, right? I believe if you start creating a video strategy and a live video strategy, it allows you to understand variables in the business, in content creation, so that when you are ready to create a virtual reality 360 degree experience, you've already kind of baby stepped your way to a mindset that is one step closer to that part. Because that's the other part of this that is really mind-numbing for so many people, is that they approach FOMO or things, they say, ooh, I don't need it, I'm not ready for that. And then they wait, and then at the very last minute, they're like, oh my God, it's here, I just need to embrace it. And they go all or nothing, right? Okay, we are getting rid of our entire marketing plan, we are going all in on live video. And you're like, hold on a second. Do you understand how to tell a story? Do you know how to create participatory content? Do you have a social following that is actively engaged with you? And so what I'm going to leave you guys with is, let's stop blaming FOMO and let's start creating processes and a mindset that prepares us and allows us to embrace change at our own pace, at our own individual pace, because no one is the same. And we need to start looking at other people's success and other people that are doing things that we might have wanted to do and put that into our own funnel and our own cycle, because that's only going to allow us to be better. And last but not least, remember, you can control what you are being distracted by, what is in your feed. And if you are tired of people talking about things that give you an emotion of fear, unfollow and block them, because in the world we're living in today, we have plenty of fear, there's plenty of distractions, plenty of things going on. You need to control your own distractions, but do not try to prevent change. Do not try to stop change, and do not stick your head in the sand. There are plenty of people that are just getting on a social network, social media in 2018 and 2019, because when it came out in 2009, 2008, they stuck their head in the sand, said it's going to be a passing fad. Nobody wants transparency. Nobody wants to be social. Nobody cares about selfies. Nobody cares about food pics. And guess what? Social media is here to stay. And for all those that decided to, rather than look at it and put a plan together to embrace it, they decided to be scared of the FOMO, and they decided to put their hand in the sand. They are now late to the party, they have lost value, and in many cases, businesses have gone out of business, in my opinion, because they have not embraced today's digital consumer. So that's the world we live in today. That's my rant. Remember, FOMO is not something that I am encouraging. What I am telling you to do is come up with a mindset and a plan so that you can embrace change. You can set yourself up to your own individual success. The goal of this podcast is to cure your FOMO, not to give you more FOMO. And I hope I kind of made that clear. And for marketers, be strategic. Once a year, twice a year, maybe, pull out a marketing strategy that uses the emotion of fear to get people to take action. I can promise you, if you use it less and you use it more strategically and you spend the rest of the time building trust in your marketing and sales, it'll be more successful. Your customers will appreciate you more. And ultimately, it'll build you towards a path of turning a potential consumer into a consumer, turning a consumer into a fan, turning a fan into a brand ambassador. Thank you guys so much for tuning in to this episode of the FOMOFanz Podcast. A little tease out. This is episode 92. Episode 100, I'm going to have a huge announcement. I'm changing the way this podcast is kind of working. I have a whole new production level. We have different little segments. We're going to add in some other people's voices. We're going to do some interviews. We're going to bring in some fun. FOMOFanz is going to have a whole new press the damn button vibe for episode 100 and beyond. So thank you guys for listening. Thank you for tuning in as always. I also have a brand new sponsor coming very soon, so stay tuned for that. Until next time, my friends, remember, go out of your way to let people know that you care. Go above and beyond. Those that help you, those that inspire you, those that motivate you, let them know today that you care about them and you appreciate them. If we each take those little steps, you'd be amazed how much a thank you, a thumbs up, or a smile will go in the world today. And let's face it, the world needs more happiness. The world needs more people showing that they care about others. Till next time, my friends, cheers.